world leader's kingdom. He's in Solomon's kingdom, and he was the principal officer and the king's friend. He was the one that the king went to for anything he needed as far as just being a friend and that he could trust and that he knew that he could rely on. Verse 6, and Ahishar was over the household, and Adoniram, the son of Abda, was over the tribute. So here are men that are leaders. Okay, you've got one here that is over the main people of the leaders and took care of them, and then you have one that is over the tribute. He's the Secretary of Treasury, I guess, and so you have these different leaders, these different men that were there in these leadership capacities. Now it goes in verse 7 here, and for ways it tells about all these things, but here's one. Solomon had 12 officers over all Israel, which provided victuals for the king and his household. Each man his month in a year made provision. And so he's divided it into where each man with his nation or his number spent 1 month just providing for the king and all his families and all his needs. And so they made the provision. Verse 8, and these are the names, these are the names of all those 12, and then of course all their secondary leaders and all the ones that we'll see the numbers involved in this, thousands of people and thousands of men, and the volume of goods that were needed to keep the king and all his people in their with their victuals and all. Verse 8, and these are the names: the son of Hur in Mount Ephraim, the son of Dekar in Makez, and in Shalabim, and Beth Shemesh, and Elon Beth-Han, the son of Hesed in Arubath. To him pertained Soko and all the land of Hepher. I started looking at the maps and studying all this out, where all these different ones are, because he chose 12, so it'd be from all the tribes. It'd be, with the exception of Levites, would be represented. And of course, Joseph's tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, took the place of the Levites. Verse 11, the son of Abinadab in the reign in all the region of Dor, which had Taphath, the daughter of Solomon, to wife. So the son of Abinadab, Hepher, the son of Abinadab, in all the region of Dor, which had Taphath, the daughter of Solomon, to wife. Now Solomon married, if you remember, when he started his kingdom, he made affinity with the king of Egypt, and then he married the king's daughter. And so there was a royal tie between Egypt and Israel right from the start, which could have helped with the later split that comes. I mean, you think about it. Here's a heathen daughter, a heathen king's daughter, that he has brought into the nation as the number one lady. And so that was something. But here the daughter of her now is married to this one. And Baanah, the son of Hiled, to him pertain Takanach and Megiddo and all Bethshean, which is by Zertanah beneath Jezreel, from Bethshean to Abel Meholah, even unto the place that is beyond Jokneam. The son of Geber in Ramoth Gilead, to him pertain the towns of Jair, the son of Manasseh, which are in Gilead. To him also pertained the region of Argob, which is in the Bashan, 80 great cities and walls and brazen bars. And so we have these people all reigning, and all these ones that are being named now are just the princes of the ones that take their time of the year to serve the king and take care of all the king's needs as far as victuals and his families and all these ones together. 1 Kings chapter 4 and verse 14. Ahinadab, the son of Idu, had Mahanaim. Ahimaaz was in Naphtali. He also took Basmath, the daughter of Solomon, to wife. And so there's another daughter now of Solomon that is a wife to, he's a leader here that he has chosen. He's a wife of, a daughter of the wife of the king. And so you see several of them. You see how all these things get tied together now, and all from his initial taking the daughter of the king of Egypt to wife. So now in verse, also notice here, it names like here in verse 15, Ahimaaz was in Naphtali. And now when you see that he's in a certain place, it's easy to see the region because those are on most maps of Israel from the time of Solomon. But he had Solomon, the daughter of Solomon, to wife. Verse 16 of 1 Kings 4, Baanah, the son of Hushai, was in Asher and Aloth. Hushai, so there's another name of an old friend and great leader of King David. And so now his son is in Aloth. So we see how a lot of these, of course, would be people that were already known because they had family through David's kingdom. Verse 17, Jehoshaphat, the son of Paruah, in Issachar. And so you see again what areas, and if you know where the 12 tribes were, then you kind of get an idea just looking through here. Okay, so they're the ones that are doing it this month, and they're the ones that are doing it next month, and all this as they take care of the king's family. Verse 18, Shimei, the son of Elah, in Benjamin. So there's Benjamin. Geber, the son of Uri, was in the country of Gilead, in the country of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and of Og, king of Bashan, and he was the only officer which was in the land. So he was the ruler over that land, and that would be down just above the Dead Sea along Jordan there in Gilead, in the country of Gilead. And then we have verse 20, talking about all this. Now Judah and Israel were many as the sand which is by the sea in multitude, eating and drinking and making merry. Now remember, they are in a time of peace. God has given them peace. They have defeated all the King David, under the Lord's leading, had defeated all the neighboring countries, all the ones that were against them. And so now we have this peaceful time of their country being together. And so they were just enjoying everything that God blessed them with. Verse 21, it's kind of a picture of the millennium that's coming after all these wars and rumors of wars and all the things that are going on right now. In about 7 years or a little bit more, we could be seeing the world go into the millennial kingdom of God. What a time that will be. And Jesus Christ will be on the throne in Jerusalem. But that's what this is a picture of. They're just enjoying their peace, multitude by the sea. That's how much they were, like the sand of the sea. Eating and drinking, making merry. Now, if you do that in a godly way, then that's fine, okay? But that's not your way of life, not the world's way, okay? Verse 21, and Solomon reigned over all kingdoms from the river unto the land of the Philistines. Okay, the river, Genesis 15 talks about it quite extensively. from the land grant. That would be the river Euphrates, from the river unto the land of the Philistines, which the land of the Philistines was along the Mediterranean Sea, and unto the border of Egypt. So way down south, okay? They brought presents and served Solomon all the days of his life. So all these kingdoms that were about came and served Solomon. Solomon was the world leader. God made him so. And so he is the world leader, and all the countries of the world came and brought gifts and served Solomon. Okay, here's how much they brought for the victuals here and all for the king's company. 10 fat oxen, 20 oxen out of the pastures, and 100 sheep, beside harts and roebucks and fowl deer and fatted fowl. For he had dominion over all the region on this side the river, from Tiphsah even to Azah, over all the kings on this side the river, and he had peace on all sides round about him. Now the kings, that would be when they have big cities, large cities, the city had a ruler that was called the king of the city, okay? So you see like the king of Tyre and the king of Gath and different ones like that. Verse 25, and Judah and Israel dwelt safely. They dwelt safely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. And you see that, and I've said many, many times because it comes up so often in the Bible, from Dan even unto Beersheba. Dan's way up north in Israel, and Beersheba's down south, way down south, even south of the Dead Sea, towards Egypt. And so when they talk about all Israel, they say from Dan to Beersheba. And that's what it's saying here. And so every man was dwelling in safety then. Verse 26. And Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, and 12,000 horsemen. Now, in 2 Chronicles, we're not going to go over there, but you can, 2 Chronicles chapter 9 says it in another way. But basically, they have 10 horses per chariot. And so you'll see that that's a lot of horses when you have a lot of chariots. 12,000 horsemen. That's why they needed that many horsemen for the chariots. Verse 27, those officers provided victual for King Solomon, and for all that came unto King Solomon's table, every man in his month, they lacked nothing. So all these princes that are listed here, all these officers, these leaders of their many people, had to provide all these things for during their month of duty to the king and his family and his visitors, it even says there, all that came to his table. And they lacked nothing, it says. So they always had plenty. Here, they also had barley also and straw for the horses, and dromedaries brought they into the place where the officers were, every man according to his charge. And so they would bring these things in, and of course every man according to his charge, that would be the way of taxation, the way that what they needed to have for the government at that time. Let's go to 2 Chronicles 9. Second Chronicles 9 and verse, well, you can read through here to see a lot. In 2 Chronicles 9, you'll see where the Queen of Sheba comes and visits with Solomon, and it talks about all the great things that they had there. And look at verse 20. Well, if you read this, wow. The king, I don't know where you start, but anyway, verse from 10 to 20 there kind of shows all the different things that were made. What you see, all the statues, all the things made of gold and of fine things that they used, and the steps, the 12 lions that stood on the one side and the other of the 6 steps that were there. And then it says, verse 20 of 2 Chronicles 9, and all the drinking vessels of King Solomon were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. It was not anything counted of in the days of Solomon. Silver was worthless. I mean, that was the scrap that they threw out after they paved the streets in gold, so to speak. That's just the way it was. The silver was worthless because they had so much of it. Now, well, maybe next hour we'll go into that more, but where David had prepared and gathered much of this stuff, even though he couldn't build the house of the Lord and make the kingdom, he had prepared for it. Verse 21, for the king's ships were to Tarshish with the servants of Huram. Every 3 years, once came the ships of Tarshish bringing gold and silver, ivory and apes and peacocks. Then King Solomon passed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. He was the number one king. He was the world leader. And we've been reading about some of the men he had with him. And all the kings of the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom that God had put in his heart. And they brought every man his present, vessels of silver and vessels of gold, and raiment, harness and spices, horses and mules, a rate year by year. So it was like they were just paying their dues to Solomon because that's the way God had it. Verse 25 says, and Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, and 12,000 horsemen, whom he bestowed in the chariot cities and with the king at Jerusalem. So he had this, and back in 1 Kings 5, we read, and Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots and 12,000 horsemen. 40,000 stalls of horses and 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots can be reconciled if you figure that out. So it's not like there's some would point to that and say, see, it says something different. Well, it just says it a different way, okay? And you can say things differently and say the same thing. I mean, sometimes we'll say, well, in about 2 weeks, and some in the old way was saying, oh, a fortnight, and so forth. And so you have those things that you can do. Well, anyway, enough of that. Look at 1 Chronicles 22. 1 Chronicles 22, I think. First Chronicles 22. Well, let's go ahead and read through this. 1 Chronicles 22. Then David said, this is the house of the Lord God, and this is the altar of the burnt offering for Israel. And David commanded to gather together the strangers that were in the land of Israel, and he set masons to hew wrought stones to build the house of God. David is preparing, so he's already has masons that are preparing things while he's yet alive for Solomon. And David prepared iron in abundance for the nails, for the doors of the gates, and for the joinings, and brass in abundance without weight. Also cedar trees were in abundance for the Zidonians, And they were of Tyre brought much cedar wood to David. And David said, Solomon my son is young and tender, and the house that is to be built for the Lord must be exceeding magnifical, of fame and of glory throughout all countries. I will therefore now make preparation for it. So David prepared abundantly before his death. Actually next hour what we're going to pick up with there is the David's preparation for the house of the Lord that Solomon is going to make. Let's stop there for now, and I want to read one letter that we got from a missionary also. If we can do that. So we see the king, the leaders, the world leaders, and we read so many of those guys. Now just think about all the leaders of world kingdoms, and yet God listed them here for us to know that Solomon had these leaders. These were men of great renown. These were men that were known by all the world leaders, by everybody that came, all the other countries around, and they were all submissive to Solomon's kingdom. And of course, as that started out, that is like the kingdom of God, that's kingdom of heaven on the earth, the millennial kingdom, like it should be, in peace and harmony, and just everybody living for the Lord. Of course, that can change. Okay, just a moment here to read a letter from the Smiths. They were sent to Argentina all their life, and now they are retired somewhat, not by their own wanting, but because of health reasons and having to come home and take care of Joanne's parents and all, and so they're in Texas. But the Smith family, faithful servants. Oh boy, we can go back through the years we've known them, pretty much all our life since they were called to be missionaries, and how wonderful it was to see God's working and some of the miracles that he worked out in their life, even to the point of we used to send certain little things to Argentina for them. And just as one example, sometimes the shipping back in 30 years ago and whatever, trying to get something to missionaries could be difficult. And we sent Brother Smith loved Snickers, United States Snicker bars. And you couldn't get them in Argentina. And so we sent him a great big bag of Snicker bars one time. And, yeah, the small one, but it was a big box full. I mean, we sent it to their address where they were. Well, before it got there, they had moved to another part of the end of the country. And so this went on, and we didn't hear anything about those Snickers, because they always wrote back when we'd send them something like that. We didn't hear anything about it for a long time. Months went by. And I mean, you just ship it and you think, well, Lord, it's in your care, whatever. And so I don't remember, I could maybe look back and figure it out, but it was like a year or so later, he was at a conference, and he went back by his hometown up there where he had started his first